What's going on YouTube? Omar here. In today's video, I want to talk about intermittent fasting. Fasting is a very popular way to help reduce your calories and intake all your calories in a smaller window. So before I get into intermittent fasting, what is intermittent fasting anyway? So it's not a diet. What it really is, it's an eating schedule. What that means is in a 24-hour period of time, you're going to schedule all your meals within a short window. Typically, for me personally, I do 16-8. What is 16-8? 16-8 is where you fast for 16 hours, you don't take in any food at all for 16 hours, and you eat all of your meals, get all of your daily calories in an 8-hour window. So 16 plus 8, that's 24 hours in one day. So what I personally do is I like 16-8, and 16-8 is one of the more common schedules. So how to do a 16-8? This is the way I do it. So what I do is I take my last meal at 8 o'clock or slightly before 8 o'clock, like at 7:30, and then I'll finish my last bite by 8 o'clock. So I'll consume all my food by 8 o'clock. By 8 o'clock p.m. is when I stop eating. Then the next time I'm going to eat will be 16 hours later. So what is 16 hours starting from 8 p.m.? So from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., that's 12 hours. Add 4 more hours, that's 16 hours. So that means then that if I don't eat for 16 hours, I'll have my last meal of dinner at 8 o'clock. I'll skip breakfast the next morning, which I would have at 7 or 8. And then instead of having breakfast, I'll just have some coffee, some tea, or some water, a 0-calorie beverage, which does not break your fast, and then have your next meal at 12 o'clock noon. That's a 16-hour fast. Then when I have my first meal at 12 noon, I have the next 8 hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, next 8 hours to eat all of my calories in that given window between 12 noon lunch up until 8 p.m. at night, to squeeze in all of your calories within that 8-hour window. That's intermittent fasting, where you fast for 16 hours and you get all your calories within an 8-hour window. So to make it easy, again, you have your last meal before 8 p.m. or right before 8. You don't eat until the next day, noontime, and when you begin eating the next day at noontime, you have to get all your calories in, essentially breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all within that 8-hour time frame where you're going to stop once again at 8 p.m. And you can do this intermittent fasting 2 days a week, 3 days a week. I recommend 3 days a week. You don't want to do it too much, especially if you're on a muscle building program. You don't want to fast too much because you could very well start having your body use up proteins and muscle tissue as fuel. And that's the last thing that you want. Now, what are the benefits of intermittent fasting? Well, definitely research has shown that it's improved insulin sensitivity, which is fantastic for people. It will lower your risk of developing a type 2 diabetes. You can get a better control over your eating habits. It increases fat oxidation, essentially using your fat stores as fuel during the 16-hour intermittent fast, and also gives you better metabolic flexibility. And also it helps you control hunger. It keeps you with your eating habits and discipline. And there's just so many benefits of intermittent fasting. So in terms of using this for fat loss, which is essentially what I use it for, it does help you control your eating, as I said, and it also makes it easier for you to eat all your meals, especially if you're a busy professional. You're a busy person, you can't eat. And I remember many times where I would go to work and I didn't eat lunch at all. 0 lunch. And it's happened to me many times, more than I can remember throughout my working career. I would be so busy in the morning, I couldn't even eat lunch. I didn't eat lunch. I fasted, and I never had a chance to eat lunch, so I just said, I'll forget about it. I'm not going to have lunch. I'll just have dinner. And so that's one way. You can shift. Now you can shift the 16 to 8. It doesn't have to be the last meal at dinner time. You can shift this window in terms of what window you want. Okay. I mean, the best window obviously is when you're sleeping because you're not eating. So I prefer to use the 8 hours that you're sleeping as part of the 16-hour fast. So that's the most ideal, right? You're not gonna, fast throughout the morning and afternoon hours and try to get 8 hours of meals, starting at the midnight to 8 a.m. That doesn't make sense either, right? You're not gonna wake up and eat at 4 o'clock in the morning and then wake up and eat at 6 o'clock and then get your last meal at 7:30 a.m. That doesn't make too much sense either. Now, there's some common myths about intermittent fasting, about that it kills muscle growth. Now, it won't kill muscle growth as long as you don't go overboard with intermittent fasting, hence the word intermittent. Not daily fasting or consistent fasting, intermittent fasting. Now, in another video that I made in terms of dieting, with intermittent fasting, it's very important that you get enough daily protein. Now, if you're doing intermittent fasting and dieting at the same time, which is what I recommend, it really will accelerate fat loss. Not only are you reducing calories 200 to 300 calories below maintenance, but you couple that with intermittent fasting and, to even greater effect, do cardio. So imagine you're going to have a trifecta of intermittent fasting, doing cardio, like high intensity interval training, or low intensity steady state, which is essentially just walking for 30 minutes a day. And then also doing intermittent fasting, intermittent fasting, caloric deficit, and cardio, you can really accelerate fat loss as long as you are increasing your protein intake. From what I said before, if you're going to be in a caloric deficit, you want to increase the contribution of the calories more towards protein and less towards carbohydrates, and definitely less towards fat. So with that and intermittent fasting and also doing cardio, you can really get great results really fast. Now, in terms of beverages, as I said earlier, to not break a fast, water, obviously, tea, no cream or no sugar, coffee, no cream or no sugar. You can even take these sparkling water, 0-calorie beverages. Let's say you're craving, you feel like you want something sweet. Yes, there's sparkling water, there's flavored water that have 0 calories. You definitely want to try that out to help you control your hunger, because if you're new at this, let's be real, you're going to get hungry. Okay, and for those of you that are new to intermittent fasting, I would start slow. I wouldn't just jump in straight and just do 16 hours, especially if you're not used to it. What I would recommend is you do, instead of 16 hours, see if you can do an 8-hour fast or a 10-hour fast or a 12-hour fast first. If you can do those fasts and you gradually increase your metabolic flexibility to aim for 8 and then 10 and then 12, and then finally maybe you can jump to 16 if you feel confident that you can do it. You need to ramp it up. This needs to be a gradual, okay? So you want to do it over the course of several weeks. And so with intermittent fasting, I would be very careful. If you're having any eating disorders or any medical conditions, I would consult with your doctor before intermittent fasting. Definitely it could interrupt your medications. Let's say you need to take medications with food. Well, obviously you can't really do intermittent fasting if, for instance, you're on medication, the medication says you need to take your medication every 4 hours with food. Obviously that's not going to work, right? And so some of the things that I've seen that I've personally succumbed to with intermittent fasting is not drinking enough liquids, okay, and also not eating enough protein. And I've done intermittent fasting before where I've actually lost muscle. I've actually looked very skinny when I did intermittent fasting a few years ago that I can remember. So definitely just remember, if you have any pre-existing medical conditions where you need to take medicine with food, don't do intermittent fasting. If you are having some eating disorders, well, you got to resolve that first, obviously, before you can do intermittent fasting. And not being properly hydrated, that can also be an issue for intermittent fasting. And also, you want to eat, of course, healthy whole foods. You know, you don't want to do intermittent fasting eating donuts and eating hamburgers, right? So you want to eat the right foods while doing intermittent fasting, while being in a caloric deficit. And so intermittent fasting is just a tool. It's not a magic bullet if you don't have your nutrition dialed in already. If you're not counting macros and you're not doing all of that, then intermittent fasting is not the magic pill, okay? You need the entire approach with caloric restriction, eating a good, well-balanced diet with fruits, vegetables, a little bit of fat, adequate amounts of protein, and adequate amounts of carbohydrates. Count your macros, do your cardio, high-intensity interval training 2 or 3 times a week, or low-intensity state cardio, and also getting enough hydration, okay? So give that a try with intermittent fasting. I highly recommend you guys try it. If you're trying to build muscle, don't do intermittent fasting more than 3 times a week, and you'd be really surprised at the type of results you're gonna get. So if you found value in this video, that's great. I really appreciate if you could hit the like button, and if you could share this video with anyone that might find this information valuable, that would be fantastic. And of course, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I really, really am thankful if you could do that. And then I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.